Broken Arrow. A quick brief, a little bit of a tutorial how to navigate through the arsenal and using the ground assets that are available for the US decks. Out of all the unit sets available, they are separated in subgroups of reconnaissance, infantry, vehicles, support, and then they can work together with helicopters and aircraft. And it comes to no surprise that just like infantry, there are recon vehicles. The main recon vehicles is a light-skinned Jeep that has multiple purposes. Either a tow system, MK-19 grenade launcher, or an M2 heavy machine gun. Second vehicle is a heavy tank that has the ability to use laser designation and that has 2000 in vision range. It has a good high average health and 70 speed. Its stealth is 1.25, which is not really that great. It's most just other average vehicles. And then we have different loadouts for the barrel gun. So we're going to go a little bit further into later on when we start looking at tanks specifically. Then you have the Bradley version. You have a laser designator. You have the light tracked vehicle, the M981, which has a M240 and the laser designator. And still, all these three have 1.25 stealth, so they're not really that great. And the same with the transports, but it's 3-man transports for the cavalry scouts. So it is unique for mechanized brigade, and the force recon and snipers are unique for the marines, which has the Law 25A1, but it's not really a reconnaissance vehicle with any other special or unique role except for parachuting and amphibious landings. The armor goes to the APCs and the IFV that the cavalry scouts at. When you're crafting your vehicles, you can actually call them out empty in tracked category while you're in the battle map. You do not have to send the vehicles out with squads, and in that way you can navigate which one is the best price for what suitable mission it has. The Bradleys have 3 less HP but a lot of less armor than the tank has. But they're very good at taking out helicopters and infantry. And medium vehicles and light vehicles. The next vehicle part we're going to look at is the infantry, which we have more IFVs. They pretty much have the same amount of armor and weaponry that the Recon Bradleys have, with some part of the difference being that they don't have the same stealth value. Without upgrades, not the same engine speed. And they have twice the capacity for transport. So instead of having the recon teams, they can outfit the regular mechanized squads. Calling in IFVs will probably not be the primary role for a vehicle player. He will probably be playing a lot of heavy vehicles and a lot of super light vehicles, along with anti-air and artillery. And the final part is vehicles itself. You have the Bradley types here, a lot of different Bradleys. Abrams, a lot of different Abrams, which can be quite confusing. The main difference is what upgrades they have. There is one class that has the ANVLQ 6 jammer, which reduces or helps negate away locking systems like ATGMs, TOWs, and other type of laser guided weapons. While the other one has a lot of armor upgrades. It has a D3, for example, has the Trophy APS, which is an active system that intercepts guided ammunition, rocket propelled ammunition incoming towards the vehicle. Generally, all of these tanks have the same fire speed, the same aim time speed, which is the time it takes for it to spot the target and fire off a round, which is 3 to 4 seconds. The reload is 6 to 7. They generally also have the same amount of ammo, but the difference is their maximum capacity for high explosive and anti-tank rounds. So when you're looking at the cheaper models, for example, the HC tank, it has a really good high explosive weapon, but a poorer anti-tank weapon. You can reach one. The shells are different, so it's called M829A1, and then there's A2, A3, and I think possibly a A4. Yes, an A4. And that only has to do with how high penetration it is and what the effective range is. So the tank that reaches the furthest should be the V3 trophy, which is the only tank with a A4 version of the sabot, or the shell projectile that they fire out of the barrel. 1400 meters is the max range for an Abrams, and then it comes at a minimum price of 290, maximum price for high armor 390 points. Next below would probably be M60A1, which comes with all the versions of APFSDs, because it's 105 millimeter. They're still really good at killing infantry at long range. So the specialization for the M60 is to do direct hit on targets instead of locking on and then losing the missile in mid-flight. For example, if the enemies use smoke as a countermeasure, or any other type of jamming device, like the ANVLQ 6 jammer. So when you're playing tank warfare and you're using the Abrams on your US deck, you want to kind of balance it out, that you want perhaps one main front tank version. You want one that's a good disguise long range hitter, like the HC. Even though it's an A1 shell, you still reach 1300 meters, so it only drops below 100 of the maximum range of all the Abrams at a pretty good price of 200. Then you have the higher top tier of the jammer systems, which is the FEP, which is at a higher price than the HC that jams and have high armor and 100 meters further range. So generally these two tanks have two different jobs. This one is for open terrain and woodland, and it's really good at non-urban warfare. And the trophy system tank, the SEP V3, is really good in urban warfare, because it has a very high Tusk 2 armor with a trophy system, but it lacks the jammer, while the FEP and the HC version has the jammer system, where when you're not close to the enemy and is in open terrain or far distance terrain where you need to close the gap with your opponent, the jammer system is what you want to use instead of the trophy, which is suited for urban warfare. So in ranking order, you have the two first urban warfare tanks, which has the trophy system. It will be the M1A1 SEP version 3 and version 2, where you can play around a little bit with decreasing or increasing the defensive systems to suit what kind of price you want to have on the unit. The open field terrain ranking would be the M1A1 FEP as the first with the jammer system, and the M1A1 HC for open terrain jammer system. For a more cheaper and standard version that doesn't specialize in either urban warfare or open terrain, you have the M1A2 SEP, which uses an A2 shell. It's 1400 meters. Just the regular Tusk armor upgrade, reducing to Tusk 1 or base armor. Then you have the regular Abrams tank, which has Tusk 2, 1 and base armor. Or if you want to use the most cheapest version, which is the M60A1 with tank version of its own. The biggest difference between this little smaller tank and the M1 A2 tanks is that it has half the armor on the front side and 1/3 of the armor on the sides, and almost half on the rear armor. 60, 100, 250, 300, 500. White is kinetic armor and HE is high explosive armor. Kinetic is armor piercing specialization weapons, such as many ATGM weapons or heavier AT weapons, or tanks shooting APFSD shells or other type of armor piercing weapons that doesn't do as much explosive power, that doesn't blow up a lot, but just have a high penetration instead. The second problem would be high explosive weapons, which is like RPGs or SMAW, I think, is a high explosive as well. The Marine Raiders are using, and then you have the vampire rocket that the Spetsnaz have. A thermobaric weapon is a high explosive weapon. And then the third option would be high top weapons that are designed to engage vehicles from the top side. Many versions, such as the typical javelin for the cavalry scouts, which is a top side weapon. It should be hitting from the top side, but it doesn't show that on the picture. Maybe they have a version that's hitting straight, because it would be OP if they could hit from the top. So in this case, in the game of Broken Arrow, it's not a top. Maybe that's a specialization on the release. But if you look at the infantry, you have the SMAW that has the upgrade to SRO, which is a top side. Right there, this is the sign for a top side damage. So if you're meeting different unit cards on the battlefield, you can look up on them inside the arsenal to figure out how they beat you and what their specialization is. Or the TOW team having the TOW 2B upgrade, that's also a top side strike. And most helicopters usually hit from the top side naturally, so they'll deal a different type of damage. But I don't think there's a top side specialization for either the Super Cobra or the Viper. None of these really have a sign for topside damage except for payload drops that are either fire and forget or laser designated, like the JSOW, and I think, no, not the Stormbreaker, the JSOW. You have to watch out for the topside damager. Even if you're building a lot of armor on the front or sides or rear with the upgrades of your armor, it's not going to mean anything if they use topside damage weapons. Ironically enough, the best tank that has the best high top resistance, which is in high explosive, is obviously then the M260, while the Abrams only have 60-60 on top resistance. If you're looking at the Russian arsenal, for an example, the Russian tanks have a better topside resistance. You have the troop transport Barbaris is in the infantry section. 15 Barbaris. It has 80 and 120 topside resistance compared to the other tanks. So this tank is very suitable for front combat as well, but we're gonna focus mostly on US decks. Some of the other vehicles are obviously then guided rockets, like the TOW 2 system for the M90 and the Law. Law also have a Law AT modernized version, which engages in topside strike. It's from the top side. Difference between the two is that the Law has a little bit more rockets, less armor, but can go amphibious and airdropped, while the M90 is neither amphibious or airdropped, but has the same armor as well, so not a big difference. Most of the Laws can be airdropped, even with the armor upgrade. And I do believe some of them also can be carried by the King Stallion or the Osprey. In the Harvest Hawk, for an example, I think you can call in 1 law 80 anti-air maximum that fits, or it's 1 vehicle per harvester drop parachute. In the support role, you obviously then have lighter versions of indirect fire support roles. You have the 81mm, which can be airdropped and is amphibious, or you have the mechanized brigades mortar carrier, which is 120mm, but it's more armored, a lot more suitable for urban warfare and support. It has 120 to 400 in frontal armor value, while the M60 has 300 to 500. So they're kind of close on HE, which is pretty good. It's very protective against indirect fire then, unless it's a lot of splitter coming in. For example, the cluster rounds. Penetration or splitter is more against infantry, and then you have high explosive, and then you have cluster. 2 different type of projectiles. Then you have the HIMARS, which is almost a little bit over 1 ton. I think it can be carried by either the King Stallion or the Osprey. I'm pretty sure you can carry it with the King Stallion actually. And then you have the Paladin, which have cluster ammunition, high explosive, and smoke. And the Excalibur, which I don't think work at the moment. I haven't really figured out how to use it. And then you have the M270, which is a tracked artillery system for rockets. It can be outfitted with attack Ms and cluster or high explosive warheads, just like the HIMARS. And then you have the Linebacker, which is a tracked anti-air with M turrets, which is pretty much camera-guided anti-air. It's Hellfire missiles. Instead of being infrared or radar, they cannot be stopped by flaring or anti-radar system. As long as the target is within range, it can hit it within 1,800 meters. The only vehicle the Bradley then cannot take down is aircrafts, but they can take down helicopters and vehicles. It gets a little bit of a double role. Instead of just getting stuck with Stingers, which is engaging helicopters and aircrafts, it adds its targets of vehicles. The Law AD then being a paradroppable with the Harvester, and it's amphibious. It has a lot lighter armor than the Linebacker. But still provides cover and the same effectiveness against targets that isn't shooting back or actively aiming back at the anti-air system. It's also faster. It's 100 speed since it's wheeled. So when you're using vehicles, you wanna figure out if you want a fast vehicle, it should be on wheels, and if you want a slow vehicle, it should be tracked. And then obviously in between that you have airdroppable, carryable, or which is best in off-road terrain.